What's up, you guys? Welcome back to my channel, and before I dive into today's video, I need to say a huge thank you to NordVPN, which is today's video's sponsor. On my channel, we always speak about safety, and given the platform that we are on, which is YouTube, given the fact that my job is 100% research and internet work, internet safety is huge for me, and it should be big for you guys as well. It's something that tends to be overlooked. We kind of see it as our internet and our activity is all within our laptop or all within our phone, and we don't think a lot about the things that people can do to get into that information, and that is where NordVPN comes in. NordVPN is an award-winning virtual private network that helps to protect your identity and your private personal information while you are browsing online. So literally while you're doing what you're doing right this second. It can protect things like passwords that you have saved or any credit card information, and it can do it from anywhere while you're at home, while you're traveling, while you're using public Wi-Fi at places like Starbucks. Because there is a Chrome browser extension, it makes using NordVPN incredibly simple, and you can secure your browsing from any device within seconds. I've said it once and I will say it again, and I say this every time that I work with NordVPN because I know people that have personally had this happen. If you've ever been a victim of identity theft, or if you have had your accounts hacked, any passwords taken from you, or you've been locked out of an account that may have had credit card information or, anything personal at all, it is an incredibly difficult situation to get yourself out of. So right now, NordVPN is offering my subscribers, you guys, 70% off their services, making it only $3.49 a month. And they're going to give you 1 month completely free if you go to nordvpn.com/Danelle and use code Danelle at checkout. Thank you again to NordVPN for sponsoring today's video. All of the information will be linked down below and pinned in the comments. And now let's go ahead and jump right into today's video. So today we're going to be speaking about the death of Nathan Haun. And this one is complicated. It's not really like anything I've ever covered before because there's absolutely no answers. Normally when I look into cases, it's labeled a missing persons case or a homicide case. And with Nathan's situation, it's not really labeled as anything. No one is quite sure what's happening, and it seems to be in this giant limbo. And so I wanted to do everything I could to kind of get this information out there because there is absolutely someone out there that knows exactly what happened to him. You'll see why I say that in a little bit, and they need to come forward because this family is absolutely struggling. So let's just go ahead and jump into what Nathan was like. Now, I'm going to refer to him as Nate for the rest of the video because this is what I have seen his family and his close friends all called him. He was 17 years old at the time of the incident, and he was just your typical teenager. He was a sweet boy. He loved his family. He grew up in Utah his whole life, and I believe at the time of the incident he was living in Spanish Fork. He was just a really cool kid. He was always very happy. He was always spunky. He was the comedian constantly. He wanted to make everybody laugh that was around him. He was also a very opinionated person, which always made speaking to him on certain subjects highly entertaining, and he always was able to give his standpoint on things and stand behind it, which is a really cool character trait to have. But his one love in life was art. He loved art more than absolutely anything. It is something that he had done for his entire life. And up until the incident, he would do daily drawings in his sketchbook because he wanted to create a portfolio to hopefully go into an art school. But unfortunately, something happened, and we quite literally have no idea what that prevented him from being able to do this. On the night of Friday, July 12th, 2013, Nathan headed out of his home to go and hang out with friends. Now, I'm not exactly sure if he gave his parents all the details of what he was going to do that night. I'm assuming probably not because he was only 17 years old and he ended up at about 2 different parties to drink and have a great time. Now, Nate did not have a car at the time of this incident, so he heavily relied on friends to come and pick him up and take him places, or his parents would take him places, or he would just walk. Now, this particular night, one of his friends showed up, picked him up, and left. Now, they ended up getting to the first party, and I'm unsure the location of this first party, but I know that they were drinking and having a great time until about midnight or 1 in the morning, I have seen, and that around that time, the party fizzled out, so a couple of friends and Nate decided to hop into a car and drive to a second party in Payson, Utah. Now, while they were at this party, something happened, and we're not quite sure what exactly. One friend of his that was there, I'm assuming it was probably the one that picked him up that night, said that Some sort of altercation happened between Nate and another person at the party, if not more than one person, and it revolved around a love interest. There was some girl that they were interested in, and it caused a lot of tension. Now, I'm not sure if this was just a verbal argument or if it ever got physical, but it was bad enough to where Nate decided to leave the party and lock himself in a car. Now, again, it wasn't even his car. He was mad enough to lock himself in someone else's car and refuse to come out. Now, after a while of being in the car, he decided at that point the best thing to do would be to leave on foot, which wasn't something that was very uncommon for him. Again, he was very used to walking himself places that he needed to go without a car, but I don't think anyone really thought to stop him after he had been drinking or because of the time of night, and also because there had been an argument. But unfortunately, Nate would never make it home. The following morning at 5:30 a.m., this is July 13th, a Saturday, 2013, a woman was driving home from work at around 5:30 a.m. on Arrowhead Trail. And this is, I guess, kind of like a county highway. It's just a smaller, more rural highway. And she was heading down this road, and she was kind of in the area where Salem, which is one town, and Payson connected, and she saw a body in the middle of the road, and this body ended up being Nate. She immediately called authorities and let them know about the situation, and they came out to the scene, and everything from start to finish just wasn't really adding up. The woman that ended up finding Nate in the middle of the road deceased said that she had also driven by at 2 a.m., so literally just hours earlier, and he had not been there. So at least that was able to narrow the time frame down a little bit. When authorities looked at his body to try to figure out what exactly happened to him, they were taking in his surroundings, because your first thought is kind of probably going to be this is a hit and run, but the situation just wasn't matching that of a hit and run. Normally, when someone is hit while walking, a pedestrian is hit, especially on a road like that time of night when it is dark and the speed limit, there usually is a lot more debris on the road. There would be car parts and other things like that, but there was absolutely nothing really around Nate's body, which didn't make a lot of sense at all. But he had very clearly suffered a lot of trauma. His body was in very, very bad shape. Another thing that was a big red flag was that there were absolutely no skid marks. If you accidentally hit someone while you were driving down a road, he was wearing dark clothing, so authorities thought, maybe it was possible someone didn't see him. There was no shoulder on the side of the road at this area. Maybe someone just missed him completely and then hit him and then drove off. But if someone hit something in the middle of the night that they didn't see, you would think they would at least try to slow down while approaching it and finally seeing it last minute, or after hitting it, they would slow down, and that would cause skid marks. But there was absolutely nothing. It was almost as if this person just hit Nate and kept on going. But that brought up another red flag, because the extent of damage to Nate's body, there was absolutely no way that the person that had hit him, if that was what happened, didn't know they had. So authorities at this point are absolutely baffled by the scene that they had come upon. They sent Nate to the coroner, and his family was brought in to ID him, but they had to ID him by his shoes and his clothing because his body was in such bad shape that authorities and the coroner did not want his family to see him like that. Now, obviously, Nate's family wanted answers, but authorities were stumped. They had no idea what to think, because it appeared as if it was a hit and run, but none of the evidence that they were finding so far conclusively made them feel it was a hit and run. So they started to think about different ideas. They started to wonder if maybe he had been thrown out of a moving vehicle, or he had jumped out of a moving vehicle and then ended up caught beneath it, and that's what happened. And the reason they believe this was a possibility is because while there wasn't any debris around Nate's body, further up the road for about 150 feet, a stretch of 150 feet, there were random objects scattered all around. Now, they weren't able to say for sure if all of these items were related to the incident Nate had been involved in, or if they just so happened to be there, but they did manage to find, I believe, some car parts, or at least something that did appear to have blood on it, so they sent all of that to a state crime lab to be looked into while they tried to continue narrowing down what might have happened to him. And then finally, the coroner was able to get back the results of the autopsy, and it was confirmed that cause of death was from being struck by a vehicle. Authorities believed that their next best step would be to gather any surveillance footage they could from businesses or homes in the surrounding areas, because I don't think at this point his family knew what exactly he had been doing that night. I don't know if any of the friends had been contacted yet, and they had no idea, what direction it was coming from. They wanted to see if they could see a car pass by in this time frame, and they were able to successfully gather surveillance footage from a nearby business. Now, unfortunately, the reach of this camera was not far enough for them to see what exactly happened to Nate, but they were able to see 2 cars pass by. The first car that drove by just shortly before the woman that ended up finding Nate. So there's not really any way this car that drove past at that point in time drove by without either A, seeing a body in the middle of the road, or B, being the person that ended up hitting Nate to begin with. So they tried to clear up all of this footage to see if they could get a better image and at least figure out what kind of vehicle it was, possibly see tags, and hopefully get some answers as to what exactly happened to Nate, if this was an accident or if this was something that was done on purpose. While trying to piece together the timeline to figure out what on earth Nate was doing in this area and what time he might have left and all of that, authorities ended up figuring out that he did in fact end up going to these 2 parties that night. Again, I don't know if his parents knew about this. And the first thing authorities obviously wanted to do was speak to the other young adults that he was there with. From what I've seen, there were about 5 or 6 other people that he was pretty consistently with throughout the night, and authorities believed that they had some sort of information that could help them narrow down what happened, whether that was help them narrow down the time frame, see if there were any issues. But unfortunately, every single person but one refused to speak. When authorities went to speak to these individuals, either the kids themselves said, "No, we won't talk to you," or even their parents would come out and say, "You're not speaking to my child," and every single one of them got a lawyer. And then the one person that could offer a story only gave the information that I already told you, that Nate went to the first party, got into a car with a bunch of friends to go to the second party, and then around 2:30, after an argument over a girl, he decided to walk home. Unfortunately, despite this person being amazing in this circumstance and being the only person to come forward with information, what this person was able to give just wasn't enough to narrow anything else down. And it was so shady to authorities and everyone else that the rest of the friends would just all of a sudden not want to say anything. Now, a lot of people speculate that it's probably because there was underage drinking going on and no one wanted to get into trouble. Others believe it was because they were hiding something, and a lot of people believe that the parents stepping in makes it that much more possible. Regardless, these individuals not speaking put a huge halt to the investigation, because authorities are basically working with a black hole, and then all of a sudden they find this body. So they weren't able to rule anyone out. They weren't able to get a precise timeline, and it really slowed things down. Now, I have seen that majority of these individuals have since come and given statements. I don't know for 100% fact if that is true. I only saw that on about 1 or 2 sources, but I am hoping it is. I do know that authorities have also stated one person has come forward saying that they claim they know what happened to him, but authorities are also saying that the statements this person is making are just not credible. Time continued to pass and authorities were getting a few leads, but nothing that ever put them in any sort of direction, and Nate's family was just stuck confused. There were so many rumors that were flying around. You can imagine a whole bunch of teenagers were with their friend one moment, and then the next moment he is hit by a car and they all go into silence. So many things were circulating and it was hurting the family so bad. But unfortunately, the leads started to trickle to a halt. Authorities finally were able to receive information back that helped them narrow down what exactly the vehicle was that could have potentially hit Nate, and they were able to say it was more than likely a 1995 Dodge truck, and it had a push bar around it. Now, unfortunately, they are assuming it's a 1995, but they also said it's possible it could be anywhere from a 1994 to a 2004 truck. This is all the information that there is on this case, and unfortunately, a lot of information that is online, because of the odd circumstances, it's ended up on weird, bizarre, like tabloid websites, and facts have just been made up, quotes have been put in people's mouths, so there's just not too much out there, and a lot of it that is out there is doing nothing but adding more fuel to the rumor fire. As of this year, authorities have come forward to speak more on this case. They have been absolutely phenomenal when it comes to trying to figure out what exactly happened to Nate and to bring answers damage to his family. Whoever hit him knew that they did it, and that's the most disgusting part about this entire situation. But I will say it does appear as if this was something that was done on purpose. No one even tried to stop. Whoever hit him did not even hesitate for a second. Even if he was wearing dark clothes, even if this person didn't see him, there would be damage to the car given the level of damage to his body. This just makes it seem very, very intentional, and again, has kind of made a lot of people throw out speculations. There was absolutely no debris at all around his body. Some people have wondered if maybe someone decided to stop and pick all this debris up to prevent their car from being identified. Or what if maybe someone followed him after he left the party? He got into an argument over a girl with someone. What if this person was mad, followed him, and then intentionally hit him, and then was like, oh my gosh, parts of my car flew off? They're going to be able to say it was me. And the Women on Zion's Lost podcast said that what if the parents came and helped pick up all the debris, and that explains why there was absolutely nothing left behind, because there's just no way Nate was hit without something flying off of that car. So that right there is obviously a huge theory that someone from the party was potentially involved in this. The fact that none of them would speak is incredibly upsetting. I understand that it's hard to feel like you are going to get in trouble for something when you were underage drinking and something happened to someone and ended their life. But this person's life was lost, and all authorities need is a timeline to try to figure out what may have happened. And when you are uncooperative, it makes you look so incredibly suspicious. His family just wants to know if this was an accident or if this was something that was done on purpose. But either way, whoever did this, accident or not, this person decided to sit back and watch all of this unfold. They decided to leave a 17-year-old boy in the middle of the road. All we do know from the autopsy report is that he heard it coming. They have enough information to know that Nate had turned around to look behind him, which indicates that he heard this person coming, which also makes me wonder if someone hit the gas as hard as possible and it scared him and he turned around. And again, that points to this being intentional. Authorities have handed this off to a different police department. They have brought in specialists to recreate the crime scene to figure out what could have happened to create this bizarre set of circumstances and evidence that's left behind. If it was one of the individuals from the party that was angry with Nate and let the alcohol maybe get to them and got out of control and decided to hit him, they aren't 17 anymore. They are now adults, and they may have their own families, their own things going on, and they probably are still dealing with their conscience, and they're having to go to sleep at night knowing they have information that could help ease this family's pain, and they are not giving it. So I'm hoping, whether it's one of them or if it's a stranger, someone eventually cracks and realizes that they have just sat back and lived their life after ending someone else's and not saying anything about it. His family has done everything they can to honor him and celebrate his life and still try to get answers as to what happened to him. On his 18th birthday, something that he was so looking forward to, they went out to his grave and they sang him happy birthday, and they brought his friends and people that cared about him, and they had cupcakes and celebrated his life in the best way they knew how to. The Utah Cold Case Coalition decided to put different missing persons and homicide victims on playing cards, like a deck of playing cards, and they put a brief description of what happened to them, contact information for the right detectives, and they decided to sell these to the public for $10 locally, and they also distributed them to local prisons and jails so that inmates could see them and it might jog their memory as well. And Nate is on one of these playing cards. There's a $15,000 reward for any information leading to a conviction. This gets to me so badly because there's just probably the least bit of information that I've ever covered in a case ever. There is absolutely no information on this, but the fact that authorities have stated over and over that this person knew and drove away, I cannot fathom being the kind of human being it would take to do that. To know that you hit something living, more than likely, period, and you did not stop. Or to be someone that has intentionally done this to someone and you didn't even think to slow down. you hit the gas and kept on going, and then potentially covered your tracks by picking stuff up after the fact. So put this out there everywhere that you possibly can. Again, there's a $15,000 reward for information that leads to a conviction. As always, all the information will be listed down below for you to get in contact with the right individuals. I want to thank you guys so much for taking the time out of your day to listen to Nate's story. I appreciate it more than you know, and I know his family does as well. Push it out to anyone and everyone that you possibly can. And if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button to become a part of the Hallan fam so we can hopefully bring them home together. And I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.